And on that note, welcome to the Plushie panel. Yes, this is what we're here for. Here for cuddly ponies. Yes. Serious business, these cuddly ponies. On our panel, if we could have our introductions going.
What's that?
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm from Snuggle Factory.
Yes.
Hi guys, I'm Naz or Nazegoreng. Some of you might know me from DeviantArt. Yay!
And I'm Radiant Glyph. I've been around the con circuit a while now, so I see a lot of familiar faces and a lot of familiar plushies in the audience. Hello! Yes.
I was pulled in to do this in the last 5 minutes. So I'm going to pretend like I know what I'm doing, but don't let them know. So how long... Oh, it's him. Matthew. Anyway,
The plushie
let's forget about that guy and let's move on to what we're really here for. Cuddly ponies. Okie dokie. Now, how long have you been doing plushies? Each of you. How long have you been doing this?
I've been making plushies on commission for sale for about 10 years now. Honestly, I've got to say, in 10 years of plush making, the Brony community has got to be the best set of customers.
Definitely.
I've done Pokemon, I've done fantasy creatures like dragons. There's a lot of plush sales in dragons. And every other group of plush fans is so nasty and demanding, but bronies are absolutely awesome to make plushies for.
That's you guys.
Yes! Huge compliments!
I've been doing plushes for about 18 months now. I just finished my university degree and was doing animation. I absolutely hated it. And I started doing plushes on the side just as a hobby, and it's turned into my full-time job. So I've been doing that for about 5 months now, and it's awesome. So, yeah.
Hi. I've only been doing them since about September last year. One of the first ones I made is actually in the audience over there, the guy with the twilight. The one on his head. So that was one of my first ones. And this is my first convention as a trader. So this is like my first generation. So I'm new.
Absolutely magnificent. What kind of effort, what kind of work goes into these? I can see that they're very well detailed. How long does it take to make one of these things?
A long time. My first pony I made about 2 years ago. It was a pony-fied version of Loki in full armour costume. Yes, so a few people know Loki, the Loki pony. He's been around. He took me working solidly about 2 weeks to make. Yeah. That was just for a 24-inch plush. Yeah. These days, because I make a lot of ponies at once, I can get through them a lot quicker, but the embroidery takes a long time. Then you've got pattern making, cutting, sourcing the fabric can be really, really hard and very, very trying.
Very expensive as well, especially for us here in Australia. You got
and finding the right
costs.
colours. Finding the right colours.
Yeah.
I just got hit with a $200 postage fee just to send my fabric for my current commissions over. So it's not cheap living where we live, so that postage really hits you. But another thing you've got to consider is it might take you, like, Pinkie Pie will probably take me 3 days to make, working from, like, when I wake up in the morning to when I go to sleep at night. But then you've got to take into consideration to get Pinkie, like the shape that she is now, and she's probably one of my latest ponies, it's taken me 40 versions of my pattern. So each of those versions could have taken me 5 hours each. So it's a lot of like pre-work to get your plushie to where it is now, even if it only takes you a certain amount of time to like make it.
Well, just by way of example, every single pony that I make, I go back into my pattern and I tweak the pattern again. So for people who've seen me at conventions since PonyCon last year or Mid-Fur before then, which was my first convention, think about all the ponies that I had at those conventions. After every single one of those ponies, I have tweaked my pattern again. It does work out in the long term because you end up with really nice shapes and you get into a sort of a rhythm, but it's a constant process.
Yeah.
There's constant work, and then for every time you redraft the pattern, you've got to redraft the pattern pieces, and then you've got to test the pattern, and all of those little bits and pieces. So it does take a long time to make one pony or one batch of ponies.
Yeah.
Incredible, absolutely incredible. And I haven't thought of a single question during that entire time. I was just enraptured. So in that case, we'll take this one from the audience.
Exactly how do you keep the structure of the ponies? And if you wanted to make them have a very, very particular pose, again, how would you do that?
By structure, do you mean the general shape, or how we get them to stand? Or
The pony shape, how you get them to stand, how you can make them have poses if they wish.
Well, with posing, if you're wanting to get them into a certain static pose that they can't change, like for example, you see a lot of plush around where they've got one leg up, and that's the actual shape they're done in, you do have to redraft the pattern a couple of times so that you can get the shape correct, the leg shape correct. When it comes down to actually getting them to stand, a lot of that is reinforced stuffing, which is a really big part of making the plush look the way it looks. And a lot of people don't, even a lot of plush makers don't really consider how important the actual act of stuffing the pony actually is. Like we say, stuff for shape. And that's really important. Like you pack a pony the wrong way or pack any plush the wrong way and it'll deform. But you can also get things like, you might have seen in certain other types of toys, there are like a long tube which is sort of shaped like a bunch of triangles together, and they snap together and you can actually make posable plush with those.
Put armature inside your plush.
Yeah, armatures. Yeah. They're a little bit hard to source here in Australia, so that's why a lot of pony makers don't use them anyway. But most of the ponies that you see that have very solid poses, there's some that have been coming out in DeviantArt lately that have been very highly posable. You'll find that they're using these snap armatures to hold their poses, and they really do make a plush look really good. Yeah. They just are a little bit of extra work. Again, we're stuffing them around the armature so you can't feel the armature sticking out through the legs and everything like that. But as far as shape is concerned, it's a lot of practice makes perfect.
Yeah. And a lot of it as well is with the weight of your plushes, making sure that they can stand up. Like my girls are really big compared to a lot of plushes out there. So I have weighted pellets in their feet to give them actual stability, because if you didn't have that, you could just push them over and they wouldn't stand up and have that structural integrity.
And there's also a lot of hand stitching involved to get certain shapes. Like I do a significant amount of hand stitching, and I think you do a lot of hand stitching.
Yeah, I do a lot of hand stitching as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you want to... anything?
Most of the rest of it's hand stitched, so you only sort of do like the bodies, and then you got a hand stitch on the manes, and then you hand stitch. Lots of fun.
Another question?
Yes, from the pink fiery fellow over there. Rainbow Dash wig.
What would you say to someone who's maybe never made a pony plush before but wants to have a try?
Yeah, I would definitely say start out by using a bought pattern.
Absolutely.
Don't try if you're not going to do it seriously and you just want to do it for yourself for a couple of ponies, don't waste your time, because it took me about 30 pattern reiterations going from scratch to get to my pattern, like when I first put it out. So go on to DeviantArt. Most plush makers won't sell their pattern, so unless they advertise that they're selling it, don't ask, because it's a bit rude. But go to people like Valley Violet sells an amazing pattern, and she sells princess patterns, stallion patterns, yeah.
Yes.
So
These ones are a Valley Violet pattern.
yeah. So you get that base, and then you can start modifying that if you want to develop your plush pattern for yourself.
One of the other things that I do, I actually got asked this question yesterday in regards to first-time pattern makers or first-time plush makers. When I was first learning years and years and years ago, one of the things I did to understand the way that shape affects fabric in a pattern was go to the $2 shop or whatever and buy a cheap, dodgy-looking plush for $2 and then rip it to shreds.
Yeah.
It sounds funny, but it actually does help. Like obviously you're not going to trace those pattern pieces because that's a bit dodgy. Yeah. But it really does help while you're pulling the plush apart. If you look at how the pieces are sewn together, you get an idea of how the process is, how it's stitched together, and why it has the shape that it has.
Yeah. Another good thing to do is if you're wanting to look at, if you like a certain person's pattern, while like stealing patterns is really taboo, but there's no harm in coming and looking at the plush, and I'm welcome for people to come and look at mine and just see how the pieces fit together. So you'll see that my ponies have 2 side pieces and then how the leg structure works inside. So if you can afford it, purchase a plush of someone that you really like and then study the exterior of that plush. Yeah.
Okay, we'll get ourselves another question. You had your hand up first in the scarf. Yes, you.
I hope this isn't too much to ask, but could you walk us through when you go in from the design stage to the full putting it all together stage? Is there like a process you would normally go through? And
Is that like starting from scratch?
yeah, starting from scratch.
Yeah.
So like say Daring Do or your Pinky one.
Okay, so would that be even like drafting the pattern as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty much to get your pattern, as we said before, start with something. If you haven't done it before, I would really recommend having a look at a pre-bought pattern. And then once you've got your pattern to the developed stage, you want to look into how you get your eyes and your cutie marks and things like that, because that differs from person to person. So a lot of us here have embroidery machines, and those are quite expensive. But if you can afford to get one, they're a really good investment for if you want to get into plush making. So you'll get your flat fabric, and then you'll use your embroidery machine, and you'll embroider out your eyes and cutie marks on flat fabric, and then you'll sew your pony all together, and then you have to draft the mane and tail and bits and pieces like that, which is an individual process for each plush. Sew all of those together, stuff it all, and then hand sew all the mane and tail and the head to the body and things like that. So, yeah. Anything else you want to add to that?
The single most boring, tedious, irritating part of plush making is marking and cutting the pattern pieces onto the fabric.
It's boring.
It takes, I mean, I sew pretty fast, but it is very hard to get motivated to cut out those pattern pieces because you just get those painful arms. And if anyone is looking at making plush in the audience and is using scissors to cut out their pattern pieces, please go out and buy a rotary cutter and a cutting mat. It will make your life so much easier. You go through a lot of blades with Minky, but oh my gosh, the amount of pain that you save yourself by cutting with a rotary cutter.
It's like gliding through butter with the rotary cutter. It just saves you so much time and effort. Yeah. Okay, another question?
Okie dokie. Let's see. We'll go with, you had your hand up first here, so let's have a look.
Clearly there's a difference between your styles of how you've all made your plushes. What has caused you to get to the style that you now use as compared to the others?
I really do think that comes down to a case of, as you say, personal style. Like, because all of our plushies are what I would say, like show style plushies. But we all have very different techniques. Like we've all been making our plushies for a different amount of time. It's very obvious Naz has considerably more patience than me with plush making. Like if you've ever seen any of Naz's work, her work is absolutely incredible. But I tend to make things. I don't like chunky shapes. A lot of my plushes tend to be very slim. It's actually taken me a while to get my pony patterns to a point where they're more chubby, whereas some plush makers lean more towards the chubby side of things. And it's more of a personal preference. I think it's an aesthetic thing. Like, for instance, I do make a lot of normal character plushies, but my favourite plush to make is Luna because I really like the slim, slender shapes. And again, it also comes down to how we do our patterns. Like I do my patterns digitally. I draft my patterns digitally. And I don't, like, do you?
Yeah, I use Photoshop to draft all my patterns.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people do draw them out, but I find it a lot easier in Photoshop just to draw it out, and then you can manipulate it and change size, and you've got it there digitally, so it can't get destroyed if your real pattern in physical.
And it's a lot easier to tweak your patterns when they're done digitally as well.
And I think it's a lot with how much effort do you want to put into getting your pattern perfect, and how much time do you want to put into each pony. So you could make like a shoulder pony, and you might be happy with that, but that might only take you a day or so to make, or you can make something like this with lots of shapes, nice shapes everywhere. So if you're really particular and want that, then that might take you a little bit longer. But
it also has a lot to do with what you're comfortable with sewing.
Yeah.
Like if you look at Naz's pattern, for instance, she uses a gusset that goes all the way around her head. Now, that's a bit of plushy terminology, just slipped out of my mouth, sorry. A gusset on a plush is the piece that goes in between the two face panels. It's that bit there. For Pinky's nose, whereas my gusset only goes to the end of the nose. So that will affect significantly the shape of the face. Yeah. You've also got where we put our darts, which are where you pinch the fabric together and sew it to get like an angle.
Sort of puffs out the shape.
Yeah, it makes things look more round. And they're all completely different because we all draft our own patterns. Yeah. We all of our darts are in different places, all of our gussets are different shapes, and that will also affect the overall look of the plush as well. And in the end, it's really good because the plushies, even though they're all show-styled plushies, they're also all very distinctive. Yeah. Like if someone walked down the street with one of Naz's plush, I would look at it and go immediately, that's something by Naz. In fact, there's a Space Voyager plush on the registration counter out in the thing. I saw that at PonyCon last year, and I saw it from about maybe 10, 20 metres away, and I knew that it was Space Voyager because of just the style that she has in her pattern pieces. Yeah. And everyone's just so distinctive. Like, I can recognise one of Silk and Cat's shoulder ponies immediately. We all have very distinctive styles, and it all comes down to how we draw our pattern pieces.
A lot of it can come down to even like colour choices. Like Pinkie Pie, a lot of people will make her out of a darker pink, but I just prefer the more contrasting pink. So that's like a little choice that you can make. Another thing is your eyes. So that's a really personal choice, how you draw and design your eyes. So a thing that's been really popular is the small irises has become like really popular among like the high-end plushes. So it just depends on whether you like the big iris or the small iris, or you like you want your eyes to look good from the front, or you want them to look better from the side, and things like that.
Well, it's also like a lot of people will do their eyes full embroidered pattern like Naz and like Kate. I've just started using applique eyes, which is the silk in the middle and embroidered around the edges. My older plush, like the one that you've got there, they were full patterned eyes with the satin stitch for the irises. And it's all personal preference. Like, I like to experiment with new things, so that's why my plushes change all the time. Whereas, it's still all recognisable, completely recognisable shapes. Sorry, we're kind of dominating the conversation.
Do you want to add anything? I'm quiet, too.
I suppose in that case we'll take the next question, and the young lady in the glasses there.
How do you make the sizes right?
How do you get your proportions right? A lot of that is really helpful when you're doing digital pattern drafting, because you're not like, if you're doing digital drawing and you trace something, that's bad. But if you're making a pattern and you trace something, that's good. So a lot of my pattern making, especially with the manes and tails, is just getting screenshots from the show, tracing around them, and then changing the proportions to take into consideration the stretch of the fabric. But a lot of it, like, you can take a photograph of your plush, put it in Photoshop and overlay it with a picture of a pony from the show, and you can see where the faults are in your plush. So that's a really good way to check.
One of the ways that I shift my pattern pieces in terms of proportion, like if I want to make it smaller or larger, because I also digitally draft my patterns, I sometimes use my computer monitor as a light box and tilt it on its side and put the page that I'm going to put the pattern piece on over the actual monitor. So if I want to make my pattern significantly smaller, all I have to do is zoom out in Photoshop. That's good. But the flaw with that is that at larger sizes, like if I tried to turn my Luna into a plush as big as Naz's one's here, or a 24-inch plush, I'm going to get a lot of deformation with the Minky, because Minky has a stretch to it. So you do have to take that into account if you're sizing up. Sizing down is a lot easier, but sizing up, your plush will deform when it gets to a certain size. And
you've got to take that into account. A lot of people ask me, can you make a life-size beside them to actually hold the weight up, because they're really heavy. Like these things, this is probably like the weight of a small cat. So you get life-size and you're probably getting to the weight of an actual small horse. So like a pile of stuffing in fabric isn't just going to hold up itself. So you need, when you get to that size, you need to start considering actually putting structure inside your plushes.
Well, that's the thing. Stuffing is very deceptive. You see the big bags of polyfill at Lincraft or Spotlight.
Oh, it squishes so small, doesn't it?
I know, it really does. Like, I can sometimes use half of a 1 kilogram bag in a single 12-inch pony.
Yeah.
And when people see that giant bag of stuffing and then see that I've used half of it in one pony, they think to themselves, where did that go? But then when I flew down here today, I packed 3 of those giant bags into a space this big in my suitcase. It was just tiny, and then as soon as I opened my suitcase, they all popped out of my suitcase. I wore bags of stuffing to the face when I opened my suitcase. It was actually quite comical.
Yeah, when I stuff my plushes, which is a real pain, I don't really enjoy stuffing too much. But what I usually do is get the bag, and you have to tease it apart, so to get it extra fluffy for when you're starting to cram it in, because
otherwise
if it all condenses, it gets lumpy and gross. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll get the bag, and then I'll just spend like 45 minutes like picking fluffy bits out of this bag, and you'll have a mound about this big of fluff. It's like a cloud on your desk, and that will go into one plush, if not more than that.
And it's really horrible if you're tired, because you just take one look at that giant mound of plush and think to yourself, God, I'd love to lay down on that right now.
I had a few moments like that.
Okay, let's see. Should we get another question then?
Sure.
Okay, let's see. We've got lots of questions on this side. We've had one from this side. Can we get? Does anyone here want a question? My lady in the middle.
Hi. You mentioned on the end that you use was it Minky plush, Minky
fabric?
Minky fabric. I'd like to know what the others use. If you.
Yeah, we both use Minky fabric as well, I think.
One of the really common ones, sorry, I'll just say before I go off on that tangent, with Minky fabric, you've got a lot of different piles as well, and a couple of different
it's
types.
all different lengths, and it all stretches different, and it's...
Yeah. There's different qualities as well. So you'll find there are Australian suppliers, but their quality might not be as good as the stuff that you can get imported from the States.
Just take, for example, if any of you have ever been into the Lincraft on Little Collins Street, they have a beautiful range of very unusual colours, but their Minky is incredibly stretchy, and it's a very long pile. Whereas if you order from, say, fabric.com or Minky Delight before it's shut down, they have a very, very low pile plush that is absolute dream to work with. The problem with long pile plush is it can get really matted very quickly, even while you're sewing it, and it can just look really, really horrible. You've also got, there's a couple of sellers on Etsy that source Minky from Korea. And when I first got my shipment of that Minky in, it did not look like any Minky I had ever seen before in my life. And if anyone's ever come up to my table and seen the manta rays, the orange ones are made out of that Minky. It's a very shiny, sort of low-pile Minky, and it's got its uses, but I wouldn't make a full pony body out of it.
And then again, sometimes you might get a pony for commission, and they might have a very weird colour, and that commissioner wants that colour. They don't want it to be off. So you might have to compromise by going with a shorter length of fur just to get that colour.
Yep.
So that's something, if you are taking commissions, you need to talk and communicate with your buyers about that.
Yeah, it's hard to mix and match the different types of fabric because they stretch differently. I found that.
The only way you can really get away with mixing and matching different types of Minky is if you're using one type of Minky specifically for the body and another type of Minky specifically for the mane. Like I'll occasionally use the Korean Minky for the manes because it top stitches incredibly well. It looks really, really nice when top stitched. But as a body, it's very stiff and it's not very huggable. But the what I was going to say before is one of the other plush fabrics that you see a lot of people making plush out of is polar fleece or micro fleece. And the problem with polar fleece and micro fleece is if you're going to use that to make a plushie, you need to interface it on the back. You need to put fusible interfacing on the back because it will deform like nobody's business. You'll have a beautiful pattern, like you'll use Valley Violet's pattern, and you won't get a plush that looks anything like Katie's because it'll be fat and chunky and lumpy and its face might be lopsided, not because of a reflection of your skill, but because of the way that polar fleece behaves.
I had some different types of Minky because I was going to do a derpy, but the grey that I bought, it just stretched way too much, so I couldn't end up doing it. I was really disappointed. But
And that's another thing when you're drafting a pattern. You can go cheaply and work with polar fleece, which is much cheaper than minky, but then you have to consider when you make that swap over to minky, which is what most people demand on DeviantArt and places where you take commissions, it's going to be very different. The fabric is going to behave in a very different way. So while it was expensive, I started off all my plush testing in minky because I knew that my final result would be what it would be when I started using minky fabric.
Yeah, and I'd suggest if you try making any plushies with minky, to start off with, I didn't think you really needed to pin it that much, but you really do, like, to start off with, because the way the different furs go, they like to slide a certain direction, but they won't slide back. And it's like,
See, I don't use pins. I actually use very small bulldog clips because pins, even in minky, pins will slide. Bulldog clips will not. That's actually something I learned off Baby London Star. If anyone remembers the Gala Fluttershy that sold for $2,500 way back at the beginning of Pony Plush. She taught me a couple of tricks back then, and that was one of them. And I tell you what, it has not done me wrong.
We get another question, anyone? Yep.
Ooh, let's see. I think we'll take one from the back. Gentleman at the back.
But where do you get all of your materials from?
Everywhere.
Everywhere and anywhere apart from Australia.
Although I will occasionally buy Spotlight's minky when they get it in because it's a very nice sturdy minky that doesn't stretch. Just by way of example, my Luna here, the body is made out of Spotlight's minky, but it is incredibly hard to get minky from Spotlight that it doesn't have an obnoxious pattern or a bunch of dots in it. Otherwise, I get mine from fabric.
Yeah, most of mine, all of mine, like the white, the yellow, and the lighter blue are from Spotlight. So I found them really nice. But sometimes you can get varying quality. Yes, I found it in Newcastle.
Jealous.
I have not been able to find it anywhere else since, and they haven't gone back in. I was like, really?
I import all mine from the UK. There's a dealer there, it's called plushaddict.co.uk, and they have every single minky colour, apart from the ones from Korea, which are a bit weird. So I like to shop where I can get all my colours and not have to pick and choose because it gets a bit of a pain when you're waiting for different fabrics to come from different places. So if you can fork out for the shipping, which can be a bit expensive, if you do bulk buys, which is what I do, then you can have like really high quality fabric in the colours that you want.
I will occasionally buy from Minky Australia because they've just started getting Shannon Minky in, which for people who don't know, Shannon Minky is a really good quality minky. But previously they had a very yucky kind of stretchy minky. They're based in Australia, but they don't have a very wide range of colours. Otherwise, I can be a little bit game and buy from fabric.com. They have really, really good quality fabric, but they can occasionally be a bit dodgy. Their shipping's very cheap. They're very cost effective. But again, you're going to have that issue with, am I going to get the right colour? Am I going to get too much of the wrong colour? Are they going to send it at all? They were having a big problem a couple of years ago where a lot of plush makers weren't getting their orders, and there was a massive, you might have even seen if you watch Space Voyager, for instance, she had a big thing on her journal about beware fabric.com. They're turning into the devil. But they have shaped up a little bit now. But if you want good minky, you have to buy it from overseas.
Okay, let's see. Gentleman in the orange up the front here.
I actually have two questions, actually. Question number one. When you make a more larger plushie and you want to make it lighter but at the same time structurally sound, can't you just use a mixture of wire or very thin wood, pliable wood, to actually kind of build a hollow skeletal structure and then leave the inside hollow with air?
It'd be very hard to get the fabric because you make it so that it's just got like an opening at the head. So to get that internal structure into the plushie would be very difficult. So
another thing is a lot of your shapes are from the stuffing. Like I'm really particular like with my flanks and plots to get them like a really particular shape, and to get that without stuffing to like puff out those shapes would be near impossible.
It's like I said earlier, stuff for shape. Like you've got your, obviously as Naz said earlier, you've got your two body side pieces. They are effectively the exact same shape on each side. There's no real, you get the distinction around the waist from the belly, But a lot of the distinction in the shoulders, a lot of the distinction in the flank comes from the way you stuff the pony. So if you're replacing stuffing with a solid armature, you're going to end up with something that looks very stiff and very... It's going to be good for display, but one of the things I've noticed about this community especially is that everyone loves to love their plushies. And it's going to be very, very hard to tote around your plush or bring it to conventions. And funnily enough, with an armature, they can actually be very deceptively heavy. I've used wood and I've used wire before to shape and structure certain things so things could be posed, and it did actually add to the weight in the long term. Because if you want to make something lighter with a plushie, the only real way to do it is to put less stuffing in it.
Or make a smaller plushie.
Or make a smaller plushie, yeah.
Did you have a second question?
Yeah, the second question is Minky actually dyeable? Like, can you actually dye it into your own colours? Or is that extremely hard to do?
Okay, bit of...
You'd have to get a very specific dye, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you've got to
Minky doesn't take dye well.
I've known some people who have had some success with dyeing Minky. The only way you can dye Minky at all is you have to get the what do they call it? The dye for non-natural.
It's the polyester dye.
Yes, polyester dye. Yes. Oh, sorry, I almost put my thing over. You have to get polyester dye, and you have to get it several shades darker than you actually want it.
Yeah, because as soon as you wash it, it'll just go really light. I've done tie-dyeing before, and yeah, unless you get an actual synthetic one, it won't stick to the fabric. Yeah. And because Minky is a synthetic fabric, and it's probably made like the colour before it's sort of made, I suppose. So it'd make it very hard to change it.
Yeah, one of the ways that I've just started to develop is airbrushing Minky. I don't like to talk about it very much. But I've used that to create like crystal ponies and gradients in ponies and things like that. So if you check out my DeviantArt, you can see the type of thing that I've developed with that. And yeah, that's another method that you can consider playing around with if you want to get gradients and different colours on your plushes.
The only ink or any kind of coloration that I've had any success with applying to Minky in a way that it will not eventually wash out or rub off is Copic marker. It's an alcohol-based marker, and the only way to get it out of Minky is with bleach. And I can tell you right now, I have put a piece of Minky in a vat of undiluted bleach for 2 weeks, and it did not change colour. That is how colour-fast Minky is and how hard it is to alter its coloration. The fabric would have fallen apart before it even got a shade lighter than what it was. It's very, very hard to alter the colour of Minky.
You can also purchase for Copic markers like little airbrush kits. You can actually slot the Copic markers in and then use them as an airbrush, so that's another option.
That's pretty cool.
That's actually what I use. I don't have a paint airbrush. I'm not special enough to have a paint airbrush, so I use a Copic marker airbrush.
Okie dokie, can we go for next? Another one from this side at last. You at the back.
So you're saying that dyes don't stick very well. How do things like fabric chalk and that work for marking it?
Badly.
Very badly. This is going to sound a little bit weird, but I actually have to dip my fabric chalk in water to get it to stick to my Minky, because the fabric chalk, I actually thought that there was something wrong with the fabric chalk that I was buying. For the longest time, I thought that it was something wrong with the chalk, that I was getting bad chalk, because I would draw on the Minky and nothing would happen. There would be no line, nothing. And it was a while before I realised that it wasn't the chalk, it was the Minky. A lot of people use either water-soluble or air-soluble fabric markers to do their pattern pieces, or funnily enough, I've seen a lot of plush makers using biro. Biro doesn't really rub very much on Minky, as long as you're not using a really, really crappy biro, but you don't want to use it on white. If you're using white Minky, you want to use a water-soluble or air-soluble marker.
Sometimes you can use a lead pencil. That's sometimes what I do on white, and just do it really lightly, because then it just sort of rubs back off.
This chalk thing is why I don't like taking dark pony commissions. If anyone ever wonders why I don't like taking black or dark blue ponies, that's like the main reason why, is I hate using the chalk. A lot of the time I'll just use Copic markers, and I like using them because they stick really well to the Minky and you can buy ink for them. So while a normal pen might run out after patterning, like drawing out the pattern for a few ponies, if the Copic runs out, I just get my ink and fill it back up and it's ready to go.
Oh, I just grab the next Copic in the box. No, well, just by way of example, the way, again, going back to the way nothing sticks to Minky, we have, my mum runs a photography business, so we have a studio. She has a lot of art supplies in her studio. She has Tombow markers, which are very similar to Copics, but they're not alcohol-based. I used a Tombow marker to mark some of my darker fabric because it comes up very boldly on things like black and dark blue. And afterwards, I actually had to wash my hands in toothpaste because it stuck to my hands but not to the fabric. By the time I got it back to the sewing machine, I could not see my darts in the fabric. I could not see any of my guiding lines because all of the ink had rubbed off the Minky and onto my hands. Soap would not get it off. The only thing that would get it off my skin was toothpaste because of the bicarb in the toothpaste, obviously. So Copic is the only thing that won't rub off Minky.
Yeah. So when you're looking for a marker, get a piece of scrap Minky, it's worth it, and test and test and test and see if it rubs off. Let it dry a little bit, see if it rubs off then, and if it's still on after you've let it dry for a little while, then it's probably good. Yeah.
Otherwise, Singer makes a really good air-soluble marker. The only thing is you want to cut your pieces out as soon as you mark them because they do fade very quickly.
Okie dokie. Let's see. We've got one up the back here, or the guy wearing the headset.
I just sort of asked, what's your opinion on commercially available ones, for example, Build-A-Bear plushies?
Yeah. Personally, I think they're fantastic for people who don't want to spend a lot of money because plushes made by custom artists are expensive. They take us a lot of time, a lot of materials. I could go on and on about how long and how hard it is to make them. But if you just want a plushie and you're happy to have like a cute Build-A-Bear plushie, which are pretty awesome for the price they are, then they're a great substitute. As well, like my plushes, I always say they're really for display. They're not for throwing around and playing with and tugging on because they are handmade. So if you want something to take around to a convention and throw around and give to people and it could get dirty and things like that, get a pre-made plush because they're built for kids to play with.
I've got a Pinkie Pie and I have treated that thing like garbage. It's really bad. No, not because I think it's garbage, but because it's a toy. The Build-A-Bear plush for me is a toy, so I treat it like a toy. But my Loki pony, I treated that like glass when I first made it. If you were wearing makeup, you weren't allowed to hug it. If you looked even remotely sweaty, you weren't allowed to touch it. And then one day, it accidentally got dirty, and for a moment, my heart was broken, and now I treat it like a toy because it's dirty. There's nothing I can do about it. But yeah, I think that the commercially available plushies, there's some that I don't have very high opinions of. I don't think very much of the Funrise plushies, for instance. I've got
4DE ones are really awesome.
Oh yeah, the 4DE ones are amazing. If you can get your hands on one of those, buy one. They are great. Yeah. But the Aurora plush, the Aurora plush, yes, sorry, they're really, really nice. There was a couple of people in the vendor hall selling those yesterday. And funnily enough, there's been a couple of good ones on eBay, but I don't want to recommend them because they're dodgy rip-offs. But if you're looking for something to just throw around and you don't want to drop $300 on a custom plush, then sure, by all means. But we're not going to outright say, oh yes, go and buy a dodgy rip-off plushie because most of those dodgy rip-off plushies have been directly eyeballed off other plush artists. There's, for instance, Space Voyager's Derpy on the Thundercloud has been ripped off multiple times.
There's heaps of rip-off crackles going around.
Where it's totally original, that's one thing, but when it's ripped off another plush... Oh, sorry, I got off on a massive tangent there. Official plush, yes, really good. Go, buy official plush, support them, because the more you buy, the more likely they will make big quality ones. And if there's anything to go by from Generation 3, Key Feathers. Funny story, we bought... a pony plush in G3 from Target once. We were skipping TAFE and we got sprung by my mum in Target. This was after doing commando rolls through the parking lot, by the way, so that we wouldn't get caught by my mum, and we got caught by my mum because she lined up at the cash register next to us. G3 had a series of plush come out of Minty and I think it might have been Pinkie Pie actually. They were this big. And they were made out of full plush and they were $150.
I used to have a Rainbow Dash one.
They
Yeah.
were incredible.
Yeah.
Nowadays they're worth a couple of grand. Yeah. But yes, they are amazing. Yeah, Key Feathers made that same face because her mum threw hers out.
I had a Rainbow Dash one about a year before I got into My Little Pony.
Yep.
We gave it away. And it was just like...
They are worth a fortune now.
Yeah.
But the more you support the official merchandise as far as plush is concerned, the more likely they are to go out on a limb and make plush like that again. Those plush, believe it or not, were actually an Australian exclusive.
Wow.
That's why they're worth so much money, is they weren't available overseas. Yeah, so they're quite valuable. And we would love to see them do something like that again.
Yeah, would be awesome.
It's crazy. Okay, so we'll go for the next. Hello there, right up in the back. I see quite a famous musician up there. Hello.
I've noticed that very commonly the typical plush sizes, custom-made ones, tend to be 12, 18, 24, 36, and occasionally 15 inch. I was curious, what is it about those particular sizes that just makes them so prevalent?
I used to work in Pokemon plush, and one of the things we used to make was polka dolls, which official polka dolls were a 6-inch common sizing. And you kind of get into a feel with, especially with a lot of official plush and a lot of plush that you buy tend to be around the 12-inch size. 12-inch to 14-inch just feels like a natural size to work in. It's the best size to use if you don't want to waste too much minky, but you want to have a good sized plush. And then, of course, for 24-inch, that's just a doubling of the size with the 12-inch plush. It's just, I don't know, the only way I can really explain that is to say that it just feels like a more natural progression of sizes to go 6, 12, 24-inch. I sell 14 inches because as I've progressively altered my patterns, they have started to gain a little bit of height in the leg or in the neck. So they've gone from being a 12-inch plush to a 14-inch plush just from natural progression. But I went for 12-inch plushes initially because that was just the size that I naturally drew my pattern pieces in. It's something that I did by feel. I know a lot of people just try to get into those brackets now because they're the standardised brackets, as you say, like 6, 12, 24 tends to be the standardised brackets. But it really just starts out how you feel most comfortable.
I just make them and then measure them when they're done. And then they turn out to be like 15 inch and I'm like, cool. So
when I was drafting my pattern in the very first place, I got a tape measure and said, I want my plushes to be this big. And then I did all my pattern making to get them to be that particular size.
And they wouldn't have been that size.
Yeah, and they sometimes come out their size and they sometimes don't. It depends on hair as well. Like you can have really puffy hair and make them bigger and things like that. But I wanted to make mine a little bit bigger than the standard ones. I wanted mine to be a bit more cuddly, a bit more like showy sort of thing. And I also prefer working on the bigger ones because it lets you get into the fine details a bit easier. So if I was working on a plush about that big, I don't think I could make it as shapely as I do my big girls.
The first one I ever made of these was half the size, and it was a pain in the... because it was just so tedious with the details. Yeah,
like tiny plush. Oh my God.
Yeah, they're horrible.
There is actually a Wonderbolt Spitfire that I made floating around. Some of you might have actually seen it. She has her own Tumblr blog now, but she's awesome. The guy who owns her is awesome. But she is the smallest pony I ever made at 6 inches. I will never make another plush like that again because it was a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. It was difficult because you do get sort of stiff fingertips when you use needles a lot. So
bleeding fingertips.
Yes, as they say back in the day of The Simpsons, you know, you get the callus, the Yeah, sorry, that was a
Sometimes
bit
it
of
just
an
never
obscure joke.
comes.
Yeah, if you're making them, make sure you wear like thimbles and stuff.
Yes.
I usually don't wear them because I find them a pain because I like to get like really fine with my sewing, and there'll be days where my fingers hurt so much I can't touch anything because it feels like I'm getting like electric shocks. Like my fingers are that raw from sewing, so I actually have to stop and say like, today I'm not going to sew because my
your
fingers hurt
as
so
sore
bad.
as mine are at the moment, Kate.
Mine, I think I have permanent indents in the ends of my fingers.
Yeah.
Mine hurts so much because so some of you have seen Kate and I sitting behind our tables sewing away at our plushies. We get very sore fingers because like a lot of people tend to use this standard needle. It's about this big with a big eye. I use embroidery sewing needles. They have a tiny, tiny eye, but they're the only thing that passes through Minky smoothly, and they hurt because pretty much an embroidery style needle, you could sew with the thing from both ends. It's that sharp.
Yeah.
It's not pleasant.
Yeah. It's annoying when you get it through and then you stab yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, I've done that several times today.
I've got a few holes.
It's like, oh, will you get through that stuffing? Ouch!
When I was finishing Pinkie Pie before the con, I was sewing her, and that was like a couple of days ago. Oh, before I flew down. And I got the needle, and it went all the way back, like to the bottom of my thumb under my nail. Oh. And I had to keep going because if I didn't finish Pinkie Pie, she wasn't going to get finished. So that really hurt.
Wait till you have an accident like the one that I had a couple of years ago for Midfir, my first convention. I was making embroidered Pokemon pillows, and I don't use many pins when I sew, so I've got a habit of getting my hands in really close to the sewing needles on my sewing machine. I've dragged my fingers under the sewing machine needle before. I managed to get my hand caught in the embroidery thread and my fingers went underneath the embroidery needle. Now, if you've ever seen an embroidery machine in action, it goes like this. Chung, 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 chung,
Extra fast like tattoo.
Yes, it was not a pleasant experience at all. So when we say that we put blood, sweat and tears into our plushies...
Quick, blood check before you send it out. Is there any blood? No.
We're not kidding.
Yeah. So be careful.
Yes, be very
Adult supervision,
careful.
if you like me.
Don't run with scissors, kids.
Yeah.
These ladies are serious about their craft. Let's see.
It's extreme sports.
I'll go with that. Plushie sewing in the Olympics. I like it. Let's suggest that.
400-metre plush sewing. I could certainly see that. I have run and plushed before. It's not advisable.
Not safe.
We'll go with the sharp-dressed man next to Cherry Jubilee.
When you first started making your plushies and that, did you worry about the particular colours until you started getting the shape, or did you try and get them accurate just straight away?
What I did was, when I was first starting my pattern, I bought a heap of like just a Minky colour that I liked. I didn't actually start using the good colours like to make particular ponies until I actually had the eyes and kitty marks and was prepared to make a full plush. So whatever you can get, if you can get like 10 yards of one colour, which is a lot of fabric, just go with it, because I usually don't finish my test plushes. So their purpose in life is just to test the pattern. So I'll usually chuck them out. So you don't want to be using your good colour fabric on tests unless you want to complete your test and make them into a plush.
It's kind of like for test plushies, what I tend to do is I go in a Spotlight all in craft and I look for the bargain basement fabrics. I look for something with roughly the same shape and feel as Minky.
I go into the remnants pile.
Yeah, the remnants pile is really good too.
Yeah.
Like I like to use flannelette for drafts because it does feel the same way as Minky when it sews. It just doesn't slide as much. But my first plush was actually, I hand embroidered it and went off an old Pokemon pattern that I used, and all I wanted to do was try and get the basic pony shape in fabric so that I could work from that.
Yeah. I still have my first like pony pad that I made ever, and I was like, it has 4 legs, yay! Like that was just an achievement like then. So I still have it because I keep it on my work desk to just see how much like I've come. Yeah.
If anyone goes into the artist hall and has a look at Key Feather's stall, there's a chocobo pony on her stall at the moment. Her first plush, she brought it over to my house when it was finished and she showed it to my mum. I was all the way up the back of the house and I could hear my mum killing herself laughing from way over the other side of the house. This thing she called it my little butt razor because it was made out of some kind of polka dot pear fabric, and it had a giant head and legs like this long, and it was the most misshapen thing in existence. So she stuck googly eyes on it and drew a razor on one side of the butt and a hairy butt on the other side of it, and it was the most hilarious thing I have ever seen in my life. But that's the whole point. What you want to do is you want to try and get, for your first pony, if you're going to make one, you try and get the basic pony shape. Not necessarily straight to show accurate, because that's something that you build towards. Yeah, it's as we said at the beginning of the panel, it's a lot of tweaking, a lot of practice makes perfect, try and try again kind of thing. My first proper pony was so deformed. Like, I know I say Loki was my first pony. Loki was my first show accurate pony. My first pony was so deformed that I had to do little tiny stitches in the legs to make it look like it was supposed to be in a sitting position. So it's normal for your first plush of any kind to look absolutely ridiculous.
I didn't show anybody my first ponies.
I had the nerve to sell mine on eBay. And then I actually ran into the buyer for that pony at PonyCon last year, and he actually really, really likes it. So I'm really glad for that.
Yeah, and don't be ashamed of your first patterns, because we all started out like that. Like, it was just like, it looked like a cube with like pillars for legs, and like that was fine. And like, I've been doing it for 18 months now, and this is where I am now. So everyone starts out really bad, unless you want to start off with a pre-made pattern to give yourself a little bit of a like heads up.
Yeah.
Which is a very good
easier.
Idea.
Like, I've still modified these patterns, but I started with the free one, and I found one on DeviantArt. Oh, they look so bad.
Voodoo Tiki's free pattern?
I think I tried that one. I tried another one, and they just looked atrocious. That was so.
Valley
then I brought
Violet
Valley Violet.
Usually the free patterns are quite atrocious when you get them in. That's why they're free.
How much is Valley Violet's pattern? Do you know?
It's like $24. I think.
Costs you like $20 or something to get a PDF sent to you, and she'll have like full instructions on how to make the plush from start to finish. So like, do yourself a favour.
One of my friends bought Valley Violets, and I had a look at her step by step. If you've never made a plush before,
it's really handy.
Yeah, you can use her pattern. It's really, really, like, I looked at the
She even has diagrams. Even has diagrams.
Yes, yeah. Oh, that's excellent.
Anyway, next question.
Let's see. We'll take one from the front here, in the plaid shirt.
You see a lot of plush makers on DeviantArt complaining about Rarity's hair.
Yeah.
And some people won't commission Rarity just because of her mane and hair. How do you sort of combat with that?
It's not that.
I don't take many commissions for Rainbow Dash and Rarity.
It depends
on
how you
wire
make
in
it.
the mane. Lots of people do it differently, but I use
Depends how
wire.
complicated you want to be. Like, I make Rarity with 3 different colours because I don't like just having one single colour purple. That takes a lot of time and effort to like have all those colours in there. So what I'll do is, if you want to commission me, you can say, okay, I want to pay extra and have like the full blown Rarity, or you can commission me to have like Rarity with a simple mane and tail, which will cost a lot less. So a lot of the time I'll give people that option, and that sort of makes it a bit easier.
The only hard part for Rarity's mane really is just figuring out how long the pattern pieces need to be. I made plush keychain charms of Rarity's hair, Rarity's mane, tail once. And really the only difficult part of anything to do with Rarity's hair is just figuring out how long it should be to get those curls.
And the easiest way to do that is to get like your kitchen paper and drape it over your plush, because it'll behave quite similarly to fabric, but you can cut it as it's on there and get it to as close as Rarity's mane as possible. Then when you lay it flat, it's pretty much going to be exactly the same when you sew it out on Minky. And then you just put wire inside, or you can sew it on itself in the curls, and that's the best way I find to do that sort of thing. Yeah.
But I think that Rainbow Dash is worse, personally.
Oh my god.
Rainbow Dash without the colour guide. I made a colour key because I was not going to stuff up all those shades of grey, because you don't have like red, orange, yellow, blue, blah, blah, blah. So I made a key saying this grey is red, this grey is orange. So I would not stuff it up because it was so much work. Yeah. Any question?
Let's see. We've got... Oh, we seem to have an Applejack cosplayer in here. Got a question there?
Hello again.
Hello again. I think I've spoken to you guys before. Hello. I was actually wondering about clothing. So I can see with your daring do-ish past heads. With clothing, do you tend to pick fabric that you would say if you were making the clothing for a real person, or do you tend to pick, say, fabric that's closer to a plush consistency?
I usually do. Like, it depends on the plush. For Daring Do, I wanted her body to be cuddly and soft, so I used minky fabric for her jacket. For her hat, I went and used, like, just some fabric I found at Spotlight that I thought would suit her hat, because I didn't want her hat to be fluffy, but I wanted her jacket to be nice and soft. So really, you can make plush clothes out of anything if you have the skill to do it. So go to Spotlight and I usually just walk around until I find something that looks like what I want it to look and feel like. Yeah.
Anyone else with opinions on clothing? No?
Not really, haven't attempted
Not many
it
people
yet.
make clothing. It's
okay.
really hard.
I've done it once for Loki, and I will avoid doing it again.
It's a really particular skill, because it's one thing to make a plush, but it's another thing to make clothes. I cannot sew clothes. People ask me, can you make me a custom dress? Can you make me this and that? And I don't know how to sew clothes. I've only taught myself how to sew plushes. So it's another skill set to develop to actually make functioning clothes, because, you know, Daring Do's bottom of her feet are a lot thicker than up here, so to try and get that jacket to slip up over these really thick bottom feet is a whole other thing altogether. So it's another step beyond making human clothes. It's making clothing for something that's like a very strange shape.
Is her jacket removable?
No.
Just wondering.
I hate making removable stuff, because I'm like,
That would be
are you
really
really
hard.
going to take her jacket off and on like all the time? Like,
wondering,
really,
how are you
like
gonna get it
Daring
off
Do
down the
without her
hooves?
jacket is like not Daring Do. Like, do you really want to take it off? But yeah.
Okay, let's see. The cameraman up the back.
I've actually got two questions. What got you into making plushies in general?
I wanted them. Personally, like I felt like I'm really artistic and I like making things. I saw people making plushes and I thought I can do that. I don't want to pay that sort of money for something I can make myself. So that's something that I got into and I found I really enjoyed it, and now I do it full time, and it's just something that I really love doing, and I really love like all the creative process in making them. So that's how I got into it.
So a rule of thumb, never say, I can do that myself, to the artist while you're standing at their table.
Yeah, don't say that.
We had people doing that to us at Brisbane Supernova last year, and every single one of them we wanted to get up and choke. It's like,
it's bad for sales.
Can you walk away and do that, to say that, please?
Do it to people on DeviantArt, because I can't hear you.
I don't know how did you get? Oh, right. I got started because I made one for a friend. That was for his birthday. So, and then a few other people liked it, so I decided to then try some standing ones, and you know, I really enjoy sewing now. So,
yeah, get into it because you love it, and really, the depth that you get into it depends on how far you want to take it. So the machinery and things is pretty expensive, but if you want to make really amazing plushes and potentially make a fair bit of money out of them, then that's an investment for you to consider.
Well, my embroidery machine was $1,800,
Yeah, same.
and
Yeah.
it paid
Wow.
for itself with my first PonyCon. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's an ongoing cost. Embroidery thread is very expensive.
oh, it is. I realised that after I bought mine. I was like, oh, gosh.
People don't realise how expensive plush actually are to make. My base materials cost per plush is at least $40 minimum.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of people don't think. They think, oh, why isn't that $20? It's like, because I would be losing money.
We don't have like factories of slave children.
Well, I have my brother, so
Yeah.
he's a slave,
Yeah.
indentured servant. I only have to pay him in video games. But no, the actual question, yes, my brother is Spike in real life. I first got into them 10 years ago, and the reason I got into them was my parents split up, and I had to go with my brothers to my dad's house because my dad is a jerk. And I got really bored over there because there's nothing to do, and all I had was a sewing machine. So I started making plushies instead, and that's where I went from there. As far as getting into ponies is concerned, I wanted to have a turn at making ponies. And after making my first couple of ponies, I realised how much I really enjoyed making ponies. So I just kept going from there.
And the plush community in My Little Pony is really amazing.
Yes, that was the other thing. Like when, because my first real encounter with the Brony community in terms of being an artist was actually with Moons, with Cherry Jubilee, who's just very, very easy to see there. And I got so... I really did enjoy the community, and that made me want to hang around.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I've made so many friends through the plush community. Like once you start getting a name for yourself, and a really good way to market is to do trades with other artists and become friends with them. And then you just like, it becomes this big like family of plush people. And if someone like figures out how to do something, you can go to them and say, hey, could you give me some tips on this or that?
I've learned so much from other plush makers.
Yeah.
Like I've learned from you, and I've learned from like people like Baby London Star and
people all over the world.
Yeah, I've even learned from customers, believe it or not, like people who have even people who have no idea how to make a plush. I've actually learned things from them. Like I learned, for instance, that there are certain areas of a plush that you must reinforce when it's going to be a pony and it's going to be owned by people, because they're going to they're high stress areas, and the areas that things I never even thought about before, because previously my plush always sat on shelves. And just things about the kind of shapes that people prefer and the kind of things that people don't like in terms of ponies or plush in general, and just the amount of things that you learn from other people in the communities is staggering. Like my previous communities, the plush makers that I was involved in, everyone was very dog eat dog. Plush makers had a tendency to turn on each other very quickly. When I came into the Brony community, I was very shy of other plush makers, because I was so used to a community where people would turn on you the instant they got everything out of you that they wanted to get out of you. And the fact that pony makers are not like that at all is one of the reasons why I stuck around. They're just, everyone's so nice.
Yeah, it's awesome. Can we have another question?
Let's have a look-see. I see a hand. I don't see anyone attached to... Oh, the young lady over there.
Quick question. Just how often do you make plushes for yourself? Or do you ever?
I find it really hard to collect plushes for myself because people want to buy them. I have my OC at home that I made a fair while ago, but these are the first 2 ponies I've made for myself in maybe a year. So it can get hard to collect them for yourself when you're sort of relying on that financially, because so many people are like, can I buy Pinkie Pie? Can I buy Pinkie Pie? And it's like, no. You kind of just have to draw the line if you want to collect them for yourself. Like I know Space Voyager, who's an amazing plush artist, is really good at hoarding them. She has probably like dozens of her own plushes, which is amazing. So, yeah.
I think the last plush I made for myself was Loki, and that was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I very, very rarely get to make plush for myself.
I find that I more so get plush for myself when I go do trades with other artists. So I will trade with a lot of plush artists, and my room is filled with plushes from other artists because I can't go on and sell them like I can my own. So, yeah.
For mine, the only one I've ever kept was the first one I made. I made a little derpy. She was half the size. And she was just too gorgeous to let go. I mean, she wasn't perfect or anything, but you get attached to your first one.
Yeah,
but I've certainly got attached to this one, but it's going in the auction, unfortunately.
Okay, we're just about out of time for the panel, so I think we can go one more question. Let's see. You with the orange beard.
Just a curious question. Which are your favourite ponies to make as plushes, if at all?
This is going to sound really funny considering how many plush makers there are out there who loathe making her, but my favourite plush to make is Luna. I don't know why I really like making Luna. It's like I said before, I like making her because of the shape, but there's just something about putting Luna together as a whole piece, like putting the mane on and putting the horn on and putting the tail on and doing the shoes and doing all the little sparkles. I actually really like making Luna. She's just very tedious. Yeah. So she's a good combination of tedious and like you get into a sort of a zen with all of the hand sewing there. So
Pinkie Pie is my favourite plush to make. That's why I made her to take with me. I really like making her I've got my pattern for her mane and tail down, so I don't have to draft it every time I make her. And I just think she looks really good as a plush. Like, some plushes just come out really well. They just translate really well to a 3D form.
Yeah.
And Pinky has just such volume to her mane and tail. It's really fun to like work with that and make her. So yeah.
Yeah, I reckon Pinkie Pie, or the Pinkie Pie shape, I found it's easier than other plushies, but I did really enjoy making the spinal, because I wasn't sure how it would come out, and I was like, but Pinkie Pie is my favourite to make. But, yeah.
Controversy. Who is best pony?
Luna. Rarity.
What?
Yes.
I suppose I can concede that Rarity is up there.
A nice pony, not
near,
bad.
close to best pony.
Yeah.
Marcy.
I think it's between Luna and Rarity. So Luna is sort of my favourite princess, and then Rarity is sort of my favourite pony.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out there and say that actually, funnily enough, the Doctor is my favourite pony. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's very hard to pick a favourite pony.
That it is. I've just been told we can do one more question, so hands up. The lucky person who has not been asked yet. You in the orange and glasses? Oh wait, you've already had one. Never mind you.
Get out.
You at the front.
So obviously, there's a lot of different artworks and art styles and mediums in the pony community. What do you think about plush making is so unique and special?
I think that not a lot of people try it because everyone thinks it's so hard.
daunting.
Yeah, but...
Yeah,
and
they
then-
either think it's really hard or really easy, and then when they think it's really easy, they go and try it, and they gain an appreciation for how hard it is.
Yeah. And then a lot of different artists have different art styles, I find, but then that's sort of... Everyone likes that, but then sometimes if a plushie looks slightly off, people don't want to buy it, I find. So.
It's really awesome to see all the different art styles, and then when you get to know the different artists, and as Radiant said, like, you can recognise people's plushes like just from seeing them in a crowd. Like, I saw someone carrying a Firefly Twinkletoes OC around somewhere, and I was like, I saw that from like across the room, and I was like, I know that plush. So it's really awesome when you get to know all these people and their different art styles, and you can sort of feed off different art styles from different people that you become friends with.
Yeah, I didn't even know like you personally, but I saw that and I was like, oh, that's Nazi.
Yeah, it was like that because we first ran into each other in person at Brisbane Supernova, and I actually saw your OC plush before I saw you. Like, 'cause I actually don't have really good eyesight. I have really bad eyesight, but I saw this white blob with the yellow mane on you. I said, that's Cobalt Tangle, which means that's Naz. And yeah, it is like that. But plush as a medium, I don't know, it's very tactile, and there's a big, I don't know if anyone else has noticed, there's a really big handmade renaissance going on at the moment. Everyone wants handmade more than commercial, and this is something that I've noticed at a lot of conventions like Supernova. A lot of the commercial stands are doing very badly, while a lot of the handmade stands are doing very well, because people are just passing over this samey stuff that's commercialised and mass-produced, and they're going for the handmade things. And everyone does things like buying the cogs and the gears and making the steampunk jewellery, and everyone makes the ears, and everyone makes tails and stuff like that. Not many people make plushies. And so there's a certain element to it that, especially when you see a person looking at your table and they're going, oh yeah, okay. And then you say, oh, everything's handmade. And then their face just suddenly changes. They go, really? Handmade by who? And you say, handmade by me. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is all really nice. I was wondering why it was so expensive, but now I understand. Oh, and it's a really interesting transformation to watch. And I think that's why plush as a medium is really, it's a really good medium to be in. Yeah. It kind of makes up for its frustrations that way, because it can also be very, very frustrating.
But it can be very rewarding as well.
It can be, yes, yeah. Especially when you, the best part of making a plush is finishing the plush and stepping back and looking at it and saying,
it's done.
that looks so nice. And the worst part of making a plush is putting it in the box and sending it away in the post. Because you're probably never going to see it again.
Yeah, another really awesome thing about plush making is it's really personal. I get to know a lot of my clients really well, and that's something that I really pride myself on. Is I try and reply to everyone who contacts me on DeviantArt and all of my social media outlets, and you find you get friendships with the people that you commission, which I think that might not be something that digital artists would necessarily do, because especially when you're making OCs and things for people, that's a really personal thing, and you're making something that's really special for them. Yeah,
and you know that when they receive it, it's going to be special for them. I've done a lot of digital art commissions over the years, and if one of my digital art customers came up to me and said, "Hey, I got a sketch commission off you 3 years ago," I wouldn't remember them. But if someone came up to me and said, "Hey, I got a plush off you 10 years ago," I will remember them because I remember the plush. And there's just something about making something with your hands that you don't get from anything else, really. I'd imagine it would be much the same for sculptors too, because that's what we're really doing, is we're sculpting in cloth.
Yeah.
Excellent. I believe that's all the time we have. Is that, yeah? Yeah. That's all the time that we have for this panel. Thank our wonderful plushie artists. You girls are fantastic. You guys are fantastic. Actually, you know what? Stand up, take a bow. Take a bow. You deserve it. One more round of applause. Just a round, 2, 3, up. Yes. Absolutely magnificent. Okay, I'll just do a quick announcement on what's coming up next for the timetables. Everyone should have gotten one of these in their bags. It looks a bit like this. Very nice. Okay, let's see. The time is about 12:30, I think. So, no, 12:45. So lunch. What? 12:53. Lunchtime. Everyone go and grab yourself something to eat. The next
and you guys, if anyone wants to come up that didn't get their question answered, feel free to come up and ask me personally, or get some cards and check out my DeviantArt page, and these girls as well.
Of course, Snuggle, Kate and I are in the Artist Alley, and we're going to be there all day. So if you wanted to ask us any questions personally, we're both in the Traders Hall, and Naz is running around with her plushies. She's very easy to find.
Anyone wants to come cuddle, dare and do, or Pinkie Pie, come up or catch me later. Thanks, guys.